Good afternoon and welcome to this public hearing. I would like to call the public hearing to order and acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I have a few housekeeping notes for everyone that is here today. Washrooms are located in the lobby out through those doors on the left. The water fountain is also located out there, and there is some tea, coffee, and some refreshments there. We will take a 5-minute recess at the top of each hour to allow for personal breaks. And I would ask that you please turn your phones or electronics off. We have made this hearing as accessible as possible to ensure that the space and time is made for everyone who wishes to participate. In doing so, we are live streaming this hearing to YouTube. We have also set up an overflow space at the Best Western Hotel across the street from the municipal office, where the live stream is being played to ensure we have lots of space for those here in person. Our staff are here to help anyone who is here to listen and participate. Please see the registration desk if you need assistance with anything. We will break sometime between 6 or 6:30 and then return to council chambers to resume the public hearing promptly at 7 p.m. So this is a public hearing, at which time municipal council will receive verbal comments from citizens in attendance concerning the proposal to repeal the existing municipal planning strategy and replace it with the amended municipal planning strategy, which contains new sections of policies related to coastal protection and incorporates formatting, numbering, and accessibility changes, as well as the adoption of a new municipal-wide land use bylaw. Planning staff will present further details in terms of the specific changes that are being proposed. At this time, I will call each of the council members for the record, or I will ask them to identify, actually. If you would please state your name for the record, because you must be in attendance in order to vote.
Letha Haysom, District 1.
Councillor Martin Bell, District 2.
Councillor Wendy Oiko, District 3.
Councillor Pam Hubley, District 4. Councillor Kathy Moore, District 5.
Carolyn Bolivar Getson, Mayor.
Sandra Staton, District 6.
Michelle Greek, District 7. Casey DeLong, District 8.
Reed Wynett, District 9.
Chastity Vino, District 10.
Thank you. The agenda for today is as follows: a staff presentation on the proposed amendments, verbal presentations from the public, a review of next steps in the process, then I will declare the public hearing closed. As the chair, I have a responsibility of ensuring all members of council have the opportunity to ask questions and receive clarity, and for the public to provide opinions on matters before council. We are guided by Policy 001-Procedures of Council, which upholds the basic principles of Robert's Rules of Order for decorum. With that, I would ask that everyone not question the motives of council member or a member of the public, not treat anyone with disrespect, avoid unbecoming language, not willfully violate a rule of order. This will allow us to proceed respectfully. If any of the above-mentioned behavior becomes problematic, I will ask those individuals to leave the council chambers. I would now ask staff to make a brief presentation on the proposed amended municipal planning strategy and new municipal-wide land use bylaw addressing coastal protection regulations.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reed Shepard. I'm the manager of planning with the District of Lunenburg. I'm going to give a brief presentation with an overview of the proposed regulations. The presentation will include the project objectives, the process, overview of the engagement, overview of the regulations themselves, and touching on the next steps and recommendations. The project has been guided by two primary objectives, one being protecting the communities from the coast, and that's keeping human activity away from the risks caused by coastal erosion and flooding. The second being protecting the coastlines from humans, which is protecting largely focused on the sensitive ecosystems along the coastlines and human activity. Some of the recent events that have occurred relate to first reading, which occurred on May 14th. The notice of the public hearing was issued on May 15th, and that is when the regulations came into effect. Public information sessions were held. There were 4, Riverport, LaHave, Big Tancook Island, as well as an online session. That's all occurred in the past couple of weeks. Today, of course, is the public hearing. There was a considerable amount of public engagement that occurred last year. So this project began in April of 2023. But during the summer of 2023, there was a substantial public engagement process. There was a What We Heard report prepared from that, but the key takeaway elements from that were generally there was a high level of concern for the issues that relate to flooding, erosion, and ecosystems. There's a public desire for moderate to high level of regulations. There was support for different types of regulations to address those different issues. Of those issues, ecosystem protection was rated as the highest valued and the highest support for high regulations to protect it. Education and awareness was also highly desired. There was also a strong interest in widespread land use planning issues along the coastline, such as coastal access or RV parks as well. So what's being considered now are regulations to deal with flood risk, so to mitigate from that risk, to mitigate from the erosion risk, and to introduce regulations that help protect ecosystems and wetlands. The first set of regulations pertains to protection from coastal flooding. The primary regulation there is establishing a new elevation requirement for new habitable spaces in residential buildings. That would be established for new residential uses. This regulation would also prohibit new institutional uses outright. There are a series of exemptions and exemptions for non-habitable uses, such as other types of uses that aren't residential, as well as exemptions and allowances for additions to existing residential structures that are there today. The second set of regulations relates to coastal erosion. The primary piece of that is establishing horizontal setbacks. One of them contains a 30-meter erosion risk area and setback. Secondly, there is a requirement for a 15-meter vegetative buffer. There is an ability to reduce the 30-meter setback as long as it's supported by an erosion risk assessment that could reduce the building footprint down to a minimum of 15 meters. Again, there are exemptions for types of uses and structures that need to be close to the water, such as things that relate to marine uses. And there are allowances for additions to structures that may already be within that 30-meter area. Lastly, coastal wetlands. This is a set of regulations that's aimed at protecting wetlands through horizontal setbacks from the edge of wetlands. This involves a 30-meter horizontal setback that also must contain a vegetative buffer. There are also policies to support collaborating with environmental NGOs on wetland mapping and identification, as well as flexibility to recognize when the mapping is incorrect and allow residents to go through a simplified process to identify those issues. Lastly, the staff recommendation on these regulations is that Council do proceed to adopt the regulations that are in the form of the proposed amended municipal planning strategy and new municipal-wide land use bylaw. And the report that has been prepared contains motions that Council will be able to consider at second reading. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of clarification from Council at this time? At this time, I would ask Reed Shepherd, Manager of Planning Services, if there were any written submissions received by the municipality from the public on these amendments.
Yes, I can confirm that 19 pieces of written correspondence were received by staff. Those were circulated out to council on June 12th, which was yesterday. They have also been posted on the municipal's website.
Thank you. If any verbal presentations are being made by the public to council, and I know I do have a list here, I would like to ask all persons who wish to speak at the public hearing to note the following. Please sit at the table right here, please. State your name and your address. Direct all statements to the chair, and limit your time to 5 minutes. A timer is on the laptop in front of you there. If you do not have a number and would like to speak, please see staff at the registration desk. If time permits, speakers may address council a second time, but they must wait until all other interested citizens have the opportunity to speak. I will now turn to members of the public who would like to address council on these amendments. You will be called in order of the number you were assigned upon registration. So our first speaker is Kimberly Landry. If you would please just, if you sit down, just state your name for the record, and if you could turn the mic on. I didn't say that, but I will say that. And just.
Hi, I got the short end of the straw. So Michael Harrison and my wife Kimberly Landry. We live at 4591 Highway 332 on the LaHave River. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for holding this forum. My name is Michael Harrison, as I've said, and I'm here to address a group of concerned citizens, not just ourselves. Over the past week, we have circulated a petition and have had over 170 responses. People who have signed this petition urging council to include tidal rivers in Lunenburg County protection area measures. This is not just a request, it's a call to action to rectify a significant oversight. Tidal rivers such as the LaHave Estuary, Petite Riviere, Martins River are currently excluded from the proposed coastal protection regulations. The exclusion disregards scientific data and evidence, and these areas are at risk of coastal flooding and erosion. The geographical boundaries currently set at the mouths of these rivers is not aligned with the recommendations from the MODL staff, which is highlighted in these areas as, which have highlighted these areas as vulnerable. It is both irresponsible and neglectful for council to ignore the clear scientific provincial mapping data included in these significant threats to the shorelines and the private properties along these tidal rivers. We request immediate action to rectify this omission. If council has any specific evidence or rationale justifying for the exclusion of these areas, we request that it be made public. In the absence of such evidence, we strongly urge council to reconsider the current regulations and include protections for these vulnerable areas as originally proposed. We believe that it would be prudent in the interim for council to put a pause on any development permits in affected areas until this oversight can be rectified. The Climate Atlantic report on climate action, responsibility and liability for municipalities states, and I quote, "Municipalities cannot simply ignore problems that are staring them in the face. Burying one's head in the sand is not a rationale or good faith response to a problem and is not prudent approach within the legal framework," unquote. By not heeding to this creates a potential liability to council and the Lunenburg County, as you are fully aware of this, and the risks. This report underscores the risks associated with knowingly disregarding the coastal flood risk for tidal rivers. Numerous experts have identified these rivers as susceptible to coastal flooding. Such disregard is neither rational nor indicative of acting in good faith on behalf of the residents residing in these areas. The mandate of this project, as defined by MODL's Coastal Protection website, is to protect our communities from coastal risks and to protect our sensitive coastal ecosystems from human impact. It is imperative that these regulations encompass the rivers up to the point where they are no longer considered coastal. As an example, the LaHave River estuary, for instance, is part of the Atlantic Ocean up until Bridgewater and should be regarded as a segment of Nova Scotia coastline. During the virtual the council meeting on June 4th, the exclusion of these tidal rivers was justified by stating only coastlines were included in the regulations. However, scientific mapping and data clearly show that these rivers are part of our coastline and face the same risks. Ignoring this data puts our communities and environment at risk.
There's 35 seconds. You have.
Okay. I appreciate your time.
Well,
Thanks. We've provided council with backup information, copies of the petition.
Oh, you still had another half a minute, but.
Okay. So we also have copies of data if anybody from the public would like to have one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Bars. Could you put your mic on, please?
Complicated technology. Peter Barris, I live in LaHave, West Dublin, actually. And in full disclosure, I belong to a group that's urging the province to proclaim the Coastal Protection Act. That act is written. It's stored somewhere in a closet, but all it needs to do is to be proclaimed, and the province will assume the responsibility for coastal protection, helping municipalities. We're facing rising sea levels. All you have to do is take a walk on Crescent Beach or Rissers Beach to see the effect, and you don't have to observe it. The science is there too. There are rising sea levels, and in addition to that, the coast and the wetland in many places is being abused by people who want to build too close to it and build the wrong kind of barrier and change ocean currents and so on and so forth. So the coast is in serious, serious trouble. There are 49 municipalities, and for the province to offload the responsibility for shoreline protection to those 49 municipalities is, you know, divide and conquer, and it's just a mishmash of policies and problems. So I really appreciate what this council is doing. And I also know that by instituting setbacks and so on, you are facing complex and difficult problems. If I had land that I wanted to build on for my retirement or whatever, and you said it's the wrong place to build, that's a problem. But those problems follow the main problem, and the main problem is doing something to save our wetlands and mitigate changes along the coast. I was involved in saving the Owl's Head Provincial Park. It was a long 2.5-year battle. I kept asking myself, why do we keep having to fight these problems where the solutions just seem so clear and obvious? And one of the questions that I raised during that issue was, if I had a lot of money and if I owned shoreline property, would I build something that might flood in the next 50 years? And the answer is, I don't know. I might. I hope that I wouldn't, but I might. And I think that what the Coastal Protection Act should do, and what you people are trying to do, is providing an umbrella organization that, or policy, set of policies that serves the better good, that serves everybody, and overrides self-interest. That's about all I have to say. I hadn't planned to say anything when I came, but I can't keep my mouth shut. Thank you very much, and thank you for what you're doing. I realize that it's difficult, but it really is important to look at governance for everybody, and that means dealing with problems that are created out of self-interest by people who want to basically do the wrong thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Denise Forand.
Forand.
All right.
Forand, français, mais English is good. Hello, I'm Denise Forand, and from Martins Point, so I'm out of your district, I believe, but I also do know the Department of Natural Resources, and those people all actually work in your district because they've come out and checked out stuff. But I'm here to say I've been fighting to save my beach, and I'm questioning why the Beaches Act is not followed. Because why does somebody have the right to come in and take a dirt road, build 3-tier boulder walls to block everybody else's deeded access in our deeds, states that we have access, yet the only way we can protect ourselves is to take those people to court, because the acts, the Beaches Acts, any of our environmental acts are not done. So I think I'm just getting extremely frustrated because I've been at this for over 10 years. And I don't understand why people can build, a half-a-mile road side on all the way to the ocean through a marsh and then leave oil residue in the marsh. I just boggles my brain what the government permits. They say, no, we let him, he can put a pipe in to feed the marsh. Well, all I do know is every time I walk by, tide permitting, because I can only walk it at low tide, I do a dance that, and I'm so thankful when I see seaweed after a storm in front of his house that was built in the lowland, because government is issuing permits to where they do not belong. And I just don't know, your MLAs can't help you, your counselors can't help you, the Department of Environment, Natural Resources, Oceans and Water, nobody can do anything to protect our land. And it's our land because Canada has where to draw the high water mark. And it's an important boundary, the Crown ownership, the private ownership, where it falls, yet they don't seem to be able to recognize what a high water means. The precise location of high water mark is a mark of fact and evidence in Nova Scotia. The high water mark is defined in a land surveyor's regulation 4, blah, 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 all that stuff. Ordinary high water mark means the limit or edge of a body of water where the land has been covered by water so long as to arrest it from vegetation as to mark a distinct character upon vegetation where it extends into the water or upon the soil itself. That's in our act. I don't know why the people that work for my tax dollars, our tax dollars, I don't know why they can't read the same script. Whether or not foreshore is owned by a provincial crown or the adjacent landowner, it's complicated by legislation such as the Beaches Act. which state that the beaches of Nova Scotia are dedicated in perpetuity for the benefit, education, enjoyment of present and future generations of Nova Scotia. The Act defines beach as. So it's very well described in our rules. I have a really hard time understanding why you, that have ears to these government people, why these rules are not followed. It breaks my heart and many others here that you go down and for 50, 70 years, it's always been a natural state, and somebody comes in with more money than brains and does whatever they want because they will pay the fines, baby. They will pay the fines. Is my time up?
35 seconds.
Oh, wow. So basically, I believe that, you know, Nova Scotia, and thank you for doing the best that you can, but please start asking better of your government because they are letting us all down. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Ann Kaverzan.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Kaverzan. I live on West Tabor Road in Maiders Cove. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and commend the mayor and this council for publicly addressing the frustrations in dealing with this provincial government's influence on municipal policies. Good for you. And that leads me to my first point. How can municipalities create and enforce their own bylaws? It almost seems like an exercise in futility. If various ministers or senior heads of provincial departments can, for questionable reasons, overrule municipal bylaws. Kingsburg Building and Boardwalk in a wetland is a case in point, and the recent infilling and rock wall in West Tabor Pond in an environmentally sensitive municipal designated area is another. All that being said, I'd like to talk about what we feel is missing from the proposed planning strategy and bylaws pertaining to the local climate action plan. There are no clear, specific regulations and enforcement policies regarding infilling in and around wetlands in Lunenburg County. My immediate concern, of course, is the most recent dumping of gravel and stone into the edge of an environmentally sensitive zone in West Tabor Pond. This was done to create an area of flat surface not there before. The ground sloped from the edge of the road naturally into the wetland, and the Princes Inlet Secondary Planning Strategy in their Environmental Land Use Strategy, Section 332, states that the environmentally sensitive zone shall be considered a no-build zone, in which no structure shall be permitted. For further clarity, it shall be the policy of Council to prohibit development within the environmentally sensitive zone. It also states in 331, Council recognizes that there is a general lack of municipal mandate to protect the environment from harmful individual activities and acknowledges that this responsibility rests with the applicable senior level government departments. However, municipalities are enabled in various ways, including zoning, to help protect specific environmentally sensitive areas within their jurisdiction. And this leads me to my next point. We have had legal advice that there are several sections in the Municipal Government Act that enable municipalities to enact and enforce policies. The following are the most significant for us. Adoption of land use bylaw or amended, item 219.1. Where a council adopts a municipal planning strategy or a municipal planning strategy amendment that contains policies about regulating land use and development, the council shall at the same time adopt a land use bylaw or amendment that shall enable the policies to be carried out. where a municipal planning strategy so provides, a land use bylaw may, item 225G. A land use bylaw may, in relation to a development, regulate or prohibit the alternating of land levels, the excavation or filling in of land, the placement of fill, or the removal of soil. A land use bylaw may regulate or prohibit excavation, filling in, placement of fill, or reclamation of land on floodplains identified in land use bylaw. A land use bylaw may prohibit development on land that, 1, is subject to flooding or subsidence, is low-lying or marshy or unstable. If the council reviews the powers granted to the municipalities in the Municipal Government Act, they could enact the mechanism to enforce it. We are urging you to find the way to make the bylaws clear and strong, and to make sure that the municipality enforces those bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Janigan. Pardon?
I have a hard act to follow. Sorry, just one moment. I'm just going to fix the laptop here. Okay, can we get rid of this while you're at it? It's all yours. Well, good afternoon, evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to commend you for taking this on. Like Anne said, it's a difficult area and a task.
Could you please state your name and the community, please, that you live in?
My name's Karen Janigan. I live in Martins River in the Narrows. And I've actually had a front-eyed view of the rising ocean levels. And I don't know if anybody here doesn't believe in climate change, but I'm going to tell you that from what we watch, we see the evidence of climate change. The highest of tides, when we first moved there and finished our house in 2018, the highest of tides used to barely come up to the sign on the wharf. Now it buries it. And during hurricanes, we've had water up to the second story of the boathouse. So we've watched, it's gone on so long that now our ramp is too short. Our wharf is too shallow, is too low. And we have to increase the length of the ramp. We have to increase the wharf. So those are the costs that we're taking on. We were very careful when we built this house. We tried to make sure that we were 30 meters from the water because we knew about climate change. I had covered it as a reporter. I knew about the Brundtland Commission, so I was very well aware. We thought we had a foolproof exit. We thought we were right. But after Hurricane Fiona, we figured that we wouldn't be right, that we'd have to, Hurricane Juan, sorry, we didn't expect the flooding, no, it was Dorian. Excuse me. Yep. Dorian, Oakland Road was flooded, and we would have had to have gone by foot through the woods in the escarpment. So Hurricane Dorian was a Category 2 when it arrived. Hurricane Juan was a Category 2 when it arrived as well. It had 2 meters of storm surge and 20-meter waves recorded in Halifax Harbor. 20-meter waves. In 2002, Hurricane Fiona, through the Hurricane Fiona Fund, provided $300 million over 2 years to support local businesses and communities affected, as well as providing money for putting in measures to prevent damage. Ottawa provided $167 million to the Red Cross to help people. So where did all this money from the governments come from? I don't even know how much the municipality district of Lunenburg spent in repairs, which I'm sure was some, but it all comes from the same taxpayer pocket. So it comes from your pocket if you own coastal land, any land. So the rain flood event in 2023 and the wildfires in 2023, both in Nova Scotia and across Canada, it came up to $3.1 billion in losses, in insured losses. So these are things that were insured. And these would also be, as I said, for the wildfires. It's worldwide. In the last 12 months have been the hottest in record around the world. It doesn't mean there are any cold spots, but it does mean that this trend is well established. We cannot put more people at risk than already are. I don't know if any of you trout fish, but you might have noticed that it has been a bust for the last 2 years as well because of either too much rain or no rain at all, or no snow. Apparently, we have a distinctive group of Canadian great white sharks. O-Search gave a speech at the MICA annual dinner a couple of weeks ago, and there are at least 100 sharks in our water right now. There are others who are not tagged, and great whites can be found in 30 feet of water, so be careful when you're swimming out to platforms, okay? And don't swim around Tancook Island, I've been told, not good. Apparently, we also have whales now, and Walter Flower can confirm this. We have humpbacks, we have blue whales,
We're down to 17 seconds if you see on your clocks.
Okay, well, there's Canadian federal money. All I'll say is we need these regulations. People can't be trusted to not build in places that will get everyone in trouble.
Thank you. Steve McIsaac.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve McIsaac. I live in Conqueror Mills, and the reason I'm here, I guess, is to try to understand how to implement these regulations as a professional engineer working in this county, because I'm already neck deep in this over the last number of months with people either trying to get in before the first reading or now how we're going to implement it between now and the time frame when it actually becomes fully effective. And this same type of setback and elevation requirement was put in place in Queens County almost 2 years ago. There was a big learning curve trying to understand how to, I guess, operationalize this. And that's primarily where my questions are for council to consider is the next step after this. So to kind of give, I want to give some examples for folks to start thinking about. So like right now, the setback is measured horizontally, right? And that's from what's called the 2013 Ordinary High Water Mark, which can only be established by a Nova Scotia land surveyor. And it's very hard to find and get that type of work scheduled now. They're all really busy. So one of the recommendations I had was for the municipality to implement some benchmarks around the coast that can be referred to, which would save a lot of headaches and effort. The second one is I'm trying to understand how the building office or planning will implement this. When someone shows up with a building permit and they could be 50 meters away from the ocean, but with the slope, it's a horizontal setback. It could be 60 meters. One-to-one slope, you'd be 60 meters back. And I guess that would be triggered with renovations as well as new construction. So we have to be able to decide a way to measure that accurately and what triggers the assessment work. Another couple items are wetland assessments are only allowed to be completed by wetland trained specialists. It's a course you have to take. It can't just be done by anyone to establish those boundaries. there's a lot of confusion as to what is a wetland between environment and folks like myself that are trying to establish the location. It's not just where you have water or grass. There's many different indicators of what is considered a wetland, especially a coastal wetland, because they're more sensitive. And the last item is trying to balance, it was mentioned here, there's provincial regulations for setbacks. There's environment, for instance, allows infilling of wetlands through processes that require compensation back. You're allowed to also infill marine areas through natural resources permitting. So it's kind of like those still exist, and I'm not sure what trumps what. And it's just something I thought staff should be aware of, because we're trying to implement, we will be trying to implement this very quickly, and I just need some clarification on some matters which may not be answered today, but I ask that staff and council try and think of that a little bit so we can make this operational in the upcoming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Lennis Corkum.
My name is Lennis Corkum. Good afternoon to council and fellow members of the public. I concur with the former speakers. Most of you at the table, or a number of you at the table, know my quest for the last 50 years on public access to our natural resources. I am no stranger to failure, but I finally feel that I'm not alone. Thank you very much. We have, and I haven't, but I've got to say, we have almost but destroyed the most wonderful natural resource in Nova Scotia, and that's our rivers, our lakes, and our ocean front. And I think it's time to stop passing the buck. The buck should stop here. Over the last 50 years, I've been fighting for public access to 9 Mile Lake or Sherbrooke Lake, and I have failed. We have a piece of land, but due to measures beyond my control, we have been blocked in every way. And we now have another 2 years setback, another water study and whatever, right? But if you take and go around the 9 Mile Lake, there's probably 600 cottages on the waterfront now. My grandfather had a 100-acre grant. That now has 68 to 70 cottages on the waterfront. And I am appalled at what we have done to our natural resources. I don't think that this council has overcome the hurdles, or will overcome the hurdles very easily, as the former speakers have said, but we need to protect what we got. Let's not lose what we have left, and that's naturally happening. A couple of years ago, we usually take a drive around the water, around the shore for once or twice a year, and a couple of years ago, and down in Mater's Cove, and they were putting rocks in the piers for a wharf, and that whole cove was brown. So how does this happen? How does this happen? We have laws, we have rules, and we have regulations. And all they do is go to the Natural Resources, Department of Environment, Department of Fisheries, Council, and they get a permit to do it. So, are we here beating our heads against the brick wall again? Council is the people that handles the building permits out to people. I question a lot that was done in Caribou Lake, because I knew the guy that done the design for the septic system. And I said, wasn't there anything said? No. He said, I asked the same question to the landowner. He said, I went down to the municipality and I got a permit. I could have put my house in the water. How does this happen? How does this happen? I'm just appalled at somebody saying like that. He's a domestic engineer and he knows better than that. So what I'm asking here right now is, are we beating our head against another wall? Because we have rules in forestry that we stay 30 meters back from any watercourse over a meter wide. That's not very big, right? But when we come to the lakes and the rivers and the ocean, what happens to those rules and regulations? What happens to that? I asked that question before in Blockhouse, and well, that's a different thing. But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So, are we again going to make rules and regulations and laws that they come down to the environment, they come to the municipality, and they can admit to do whatever they want? That's my question. Is this gonna happen all over again? And eventually, we're not gonna have anything to protect. And I don't think that should happen. And like I told this council one time before, when we had it placed on the Have River, you have the key to turn the ignition. Please take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Stevens.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Stevens. I'm from West Havers Lane area, Maiders Cove in Lunenburg County. I think we're hearing a lot of the same sort of concerns from residents of Lunenburg County. The new coastal protection plan for the municipality of District of Lunenburg, as proposed, will include secondary planning strategy and land use bylaws for the Princess Inlet and area. And under Section 3.3 in the Environmental Land Use Act, that area of environmentally sensitive land surrounding the West Havers Pond, I hope, will still remain as an area of special significance and an area to be protected. I think, like so many wetlands in the Lunenburg area and special coastlines, it's really important that the municipality continue to protect these areas. The wetlands of special significance have special significance environmentally. They're much more greatly efficient at carbon sequestration. They are much more efficient at that than forests. We know that a critical support for nature, multiple bird and wildlife species, and a variety of plant lives that are in these areas support a healthy environment. And with great respect to my previous speaker, there is an enormous loss of wetland, coastland, and healthy environments in Nova Scotia. I think that you're in a unique position as a council to take leadership in the province and stress that this Planning and Protection Act should not be development versus wetland and coastal protection, but working in unison. I think that the concerns that have been addressed repeatedly reflect a stepping back of the provincial legislation, and your bylaws defer the enforcement of infractions to those bodies. So with respect to Ms. Caversan's comments earlier, I think extra protection with enforceable bylaws at the municipal level would be a tremendously good step in protecting wetlands, protecting coastlands, and protecting Lunenburg County. And then perhaps, as an example to other municipalities, we can move forward and protect the significant parts of our province that are being so greatly eroded. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Philip Williams.
Good evening, Council, Your Honor the Mayor, and the guests we have with us tonight. I'm sitting with my back to these folks, so I'm going to be careful what I say, but let's move forward. My name is Philip Williams. I live at 211 Pearl Street in Wildville. No, I am not a coastal property owner. I've been watching the proceedings with the proposed land use bylaw particularly the coastal protection, with some interest. My interest was especially piqued when I realized it was a foundational document that will be used for the development of a county-wide implementation of further zoning and land use restrictions. I choose the word restriction because on further examination of the proposed act we have before us, I don't see protection of the coast. What I am seeing are regulations and requirements that ultimately allow for coastal development, but a much higher cost to the landowner. As I stated in the LaHave public information session, I view the act in its present format should more aptly be called the Restriction of Development Act, which only serves to increase the cost of development at the expense of the present landowners. Development that might only be possible done after engineering surveys, infilling, armoring, or other allowable undertakings, again, designed to increase the cost of development. What does this mean for the current coastal property owners that may have received their property after having been in their family for generations, or people that have saved their entire lives to purchase property with the hope of developing it for retirement? Will they be forced off their land because of the potentially massive increase of cost of developing their property that they now may need to sell at a loss? For what? Preparation for hypothetical computer modeling of massive increases of sea level rise? You as counsel for MODL have a tremendous amount to consider with implementation of this bylaw. You are good people serving as part-time counselors with no personal staff or budget to do your own independent research. You are at the mercy of well-meaning, hard-working staff that have a singular perspective on the topic of climate change that, as we know, if we look beyond the CBC or global talking points that are so dutifully repeated, there is not consensus on what future climate looks like or how it will affect us. Let me be clear, is climate change real? Of course it is. Nobody even with the slightest ability to formulate a cohesive thought denies that climate change is real. The question is, how much is it changing, how quickly, and why? The science is not settled. The IPCC, whose information much of this planning is developed around, historically has not shown it can accurately predict future climate targets and frequently revises its predictions when it is proven wrong. Are you willing to risk the potential future litigation brought by property owners adversely affected by this act that we as taxpayers ultimately will need to pay for? You as counsel have a legal, fiduciary responsibility to adequately analyze all the information widely available, information not necessarily presented to you by staff, some of which offers a counter-narrative to the suggested coming disasters. Lastly, as I've stated previously, I'm not a coastal property owner. Who am I to impose my views on the people that are mostly directly affected by this? I propose you place on hold implementation of the act until you have had time to look at the information available. You have the time. Other municipalities, some of which have not even started the process, are taking a slower, more methodical approach. I would also propose you give the decision to the actual property owners themselves. Leah Zink, the returning officer for MODL, has proposed, and you approved of, online digital voting for the upcoming municipal election in October. She indicated the cost saving would justify such a move. Surely MODL has the ability to find all the coastal property owners affected and have them decide democratically at minimal cost through, let's call it, digital direct democracy. Let's see if this bylaw is even wanted by the people who are most affected by it. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. We gonna take a break now? Okay. Andrew Himmelman. Could you come up to the mic, please? There will be more time allocated at the end for anyone who needs additional time, if time permits.
Yeah, I was talking outside and I was going to ask at the end if I could increase the time frame from the shortened 5 minutes to the regular 10 minutes, but I'll read as much as I can, as fast as I can. Thank you. Can you hear me? Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, and public that's gathered for this public hearing. My name is Andrew Himmelman. My family and I live in Newcombville, District 4. I'd like to state we only have one ocean, one shoreline, and only one chance to help prevent damage for future generations. But this has to be achieved properly and not, well, at least it's a start. Because it's not a start if we're going to go backwards right from the beginning. I'd like to start off by letting the general public here know that I've attended almost every council meeting over the past 3 months where this MPS has been talked about. I've also attended every public info session other than Tancook Island, and I have also had a meeting with Modal CAO about how this document was prepared, what info and data was used, and as well how it has been presented to the public. Now, I have several concerns that I'm going to touch on here tonight, but I want to start with questions commonly asked by the public. Most of these great questions were not posted on the frequently asked questions modal page, nor posted with the answers to maybe help the next group. But here's what I took away as being the main concerns of landowners. What is going to happen to my property value? Is my insurance going to go up once you deem my land at risk? How much is this extra surveyor and erosion assessment going to cost? Why are you doing this? Is this going to affect inland rivers and lakes? How are you going to enforce this? How are you staffed for all these extra development permits? Have you looked into the legal side of this in case members of the public want to litigate or sue Modal? Can you ensure my insurance rate is going to be unaffected? Now, Reed, Planning Director, addressed these questions publicly, but mostly walked around some of the questions with open-ended answers. My concerns right from the beginning were how the people have been consulted, how this document is going to be used, and the actual data packed inside, and how does this actually protect the environment. We are, of course, Canada's ocean's playground, and we must protect this for future generations. Modal has said they did a survey where 206 property owners responded. They also claim 240 residents attended 7 open houses, and they also claim only 111 vacant properties will be affected by this MPS. But this is simply not true, and a slip of evidence by staff to hide the truth. I've got correspondence from Reed that in reality, the true number of properties being affected is 4,488. Council was never publicly told this during any public staff presentations, public events, and I imagine they still do not know the truth right now. Why have you not contacted these property owners? Why has there not been a mail out or phone calls? You do not miss mailing out the property tax bills, now do you? All 4,488 properties will be affected in one way or the other, because if you want to modify your existing house, you will have to build, you will have new building rules and will ultimately be affected. I'd like to know how many current standing structures will be affected by this, because when I use a Modal Coastal Protection ArcGIS mapping tool and turn on the 3.97 meter flood mapping layer, I find that just between Dublin Shore and Crescent Beach and the islands, there are well over 100 homes affected just in that little area. That doesn't even include vacant lots where you could potentially build on. The data has obviously been manipulated for plausible deniability, and the number of actual homes and properties that will be affected is much larger, certainly not 111. Now, May 14th, during first reading, Deputy Mayor Wendy Oikel asked the property owners if they were personally notified of the implications so they can voice their opinions and thoughts. Now, that was on the low numbers that were given by council, or to council by staff during the first reading presentation, roughly 40 to 50 properties, and that was just a month ago. If there are hundreds or even thousands of properties that this will affect, why hasn't Modal contacted these owners and at least have a discussion? 206 property owners you did have a survey with. Were they told they can't put a piece on their house unless it's on the back
30
side?
seconds.
Were they told the setback numbers so they can't build on their vacant lots? The consolidation process here has been expedited, and you
have not properly contacted nor informed all affected landowners under this new MPS. How it is explained to me by the CAO is that this is a MPS or a municipal planning strategy, and it's a foundational document that bylaws are going to be created from across the municipality.
And again, if time permits at the end of the evening, there will be opportunity for people to speak again.
Thank you. That's just the beginning.
We are now going to take a 5-minute break and resume at 5:05. We are going to get started again. I would ask that you please take your seats. And first on the list would be Greg Ernst. Yeah. I would ask that you just wait 1 minute. We have one counselor to return to their seat, please. He's out there. Okay, Mr. Ernst, please proceed.
Okay. My name is Greg Ernst from First Peninsula, so I'd be in Chassidy's country. I'm one of the, I'm not sure who may or may not have more skin in the game than me here. I've got between 44 and 4,500 feet of shorefront on the back part of my farm. In general, when our people came over, let's put it this way, in 1750, and my people came down, we signed an agreement, and I would love to know, I don't think we were British subjects yet, which would make it something like a treaty. And that would be that in return for feeding the British in Halifax, we were granted properties, and the free use of the properties to be at no more than 55 shillings a year taxation. And if there would be anybody interested in examining the treaty aspect, because I don't think, again, we were British subjects at the time, we were foreign Protestants. And, you know, and so in general, I believe in freedom. In general, I believe I'm on the side of the landowner to be free to do with the property what they see fit. Our people put houses up without building inspectors and without regulations, that some of which are still standing from those times, and many of which would have been torn down, and it took a lot of work to tear them down. And they didn't need anybody to tell them how to build them. And so it always concerns me when people want to, seem to want to bow down and submit to more rules and more regulations and more red tape, and as one guy said, more expense. You see the waterfront development, and you see the big places, and it seems, as one guy referred to here, is that it's not going to be a problem for the rich to develop their property. What's going to be a problem is for, more marginal people to be able to do anything in the sea of expense, which is coming. And so, yes, you can see that there's erosion along the coast, but I would encourage, and some want to talk about man-made climate change and 0.04% carbon dioxide having anything to do with that. I would say that if you I think the attitude of the people who promote such things is that if you're fool enough to believe that a lie that big, that 0.04% of anything is going, sort of cyanide gas is going to affect much of anything, you're basically deserve what you get. But I have maintained my property as a farm. If you drive along the Second Peninsula Road, you look across, about a third of the backside of what you see is my property. It is a farm. It is untouched. You know, the coast is pretty much as it was. Another thing that I have, you know, why not, if you want to do something about erosion, well, why not say, for instance, subsidize rocking along the coast? It's an expensive thing. I've got myself a little dozer, and there's plenty of rock on the property, but I've been so busy farming I haven't gotten around to it yet. But that would be something tangible that would help people protect a lot of property, actually do something that makes sense. As far as you know, climate change and massive flooding and all these horror stories, I would refer you back to, I can't remember what year in the 1800s it was, but when Nova Scotia was an island. And this was well before, you know, the carbon levels increased or anything man-made. These things come along from time to time.
30 seconds,
Yep.
just so you know.
And so I'll get off on another topic for the last 30 seconds, and that is that electric cars, in my view, given that we got coal-fired plants and you're losing efficiency, is a silly idea. It's actually putting more carbon. If you care about carbon, it's putting more carbon to have electric cars in Nova Scotia than not. And so it shows the lack of critical thinking, which causes me to lose confidence in the ability of people even to devise regulations when they have that little critical thinking ability. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tyler Vino.
Good day, I guess it's evening now. Good evening, members of council and mayor. My name is Tyler Vino from Broad Cove. I am one property owner here out of the 40-some hundred. I don't agree with this. I think we could slow it down, come up with some better solutions and answers. I would ask, why haven't more property owners showed up to the meetings and been contacted by council members? Thank you.
Thank you. Alex de Saint Sardos. I apologize for that pronunciation. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, my name's Alex de Saint Sardos. I have 2 properties in Green Bay, and I've got, I guess there's 7 in our extended family. Mine's right on the coast. I'm nearly in the water. And I wasn't planning on being here or talking, so I apologize for not having anything prepared. So our property, when we bought it about 10 years ago, had lost 50 feet in the previous 50 years since the last time it was surveyed. So erosion, land loss, very much real. We see with every storm. My cousins have got a place very close to water as well, and they have the misfortune of having a basement. It gets flooded, everything gets ruined. There's houses popping up very frequently in Green Bay, especially where this legislation is kind of coming, so everybody's rushing to build as close to the ocean as they can. So I see this as a good thing. It's currently a free-for-all. There's no rules. I'm okay with being told, no, you can't put a McMansion in the water or right on the edge of the water. It doesn't make any sense, but people do it. You can drive along the shoreline and see them. Everybody has to pay for the cleanup afterwards. It doesn't make sense to have no rules. You won't find a developed nation in the world that doesn't have rules around shoreline protection and building setbacks. You wouldn't cut down all the mangroves in Florida or Costa Rica because you own them, so you could build a house. It wouldn't make any sense. We have rules about smoke alarms and distances for the electrical outlets from the ground. We have speed limits. Wouldn't we all have loved to have had rules to prevent the derelict ships in the LaHave River so we don't have to deal with them afterwards? How long has that taken to clean up? There's a reason for a lot of these rules. Coastal protection is not, rocket science. It's pretty logical. Anywhere with a coastline usually has rules about building for the same, because we can't trust ourselves to not do stupid things. Same with seatbelts and drinking and driving and a variety of other issues. So I guess as a coastal property owner who's losing property as we speak, I am very much for, creating rules around construction and building and setbacks. When you do the province's new, they've created an app or website where you put in your community and your issues, and it, instead of putting coastal protection guidelines, if you follow that for our community in Green Bay, the only tangible suggestion it comes up with is property setbacks, building setbacks. So if you follow the province's app for our community, the only useful suggestion that pops up is building setbacks. So, they've left it up to you guys to implement it, but it still makes sense. And it's not even that ridiculous. It's 30 meters. That's not that far. If you own a lot of land, you can build 30 meters further back from the ocean. And you probably should. If you live here all year, you'll know that that's probably wise. So I guess that's really all I had to say is I support any initiative to create some sort of rule about, not building right out onto the rocks in an area that gets a lot of storm surge and sea level rise and erosion. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Karen Reinhardt.
I'm Karen Reinhardt. I live in New Cumberland, and I also have a place along the water in Crescent Beach, which I know in a very short time is going to be underwater. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I didn't come prepared to speak either, but I put my name in just in case. So, to my mind, a lot of this deliberation by council began when the development that's happening at Little Crescent Beach became apparent to everyone in the community. There was a big meeting in Petite Riviere, which some of you attended. You never introduced yourselves, but we know you were there. And out of that meeting in Little Crescent Beach came a directive to the council to have municipal regulations in place by the end of the year, which should have been the end of 2023. Staff was directed to spend most of their time developing these regulations, and they did. And they came back to council in November with an excellent set of regulations, which would have probably satisfied most of the naysayers on that side of the fence. It satisfied me. My own feeling is that what came out of that council meeting, where what I considered excellent regulations was completely and passed unanimously by your planning and advisory committee, was completely savaged here at the municipal council meeting. And what savaged it, to my mind, in fact, I could almost see in the eyes how it was happening, was the worry about devaluing people's properties. Now, we're not talking about devaluating everybody's property. We're talking about devaluing certain people's properties. And so what we have now is a very watered-down version of what can or cannot be done. And I have to admit that I am very, very ambivalent about this, because I want to see regulations. I want to see good, enforceable regulations. But what I see now in what's being presented by council is regulations that are so full of loopholes that you almost might as well have nothing, because the loopholes will allow people to infill, expand their property, their buildings, their structures by 100%. You've eliminated Area A, which was recommended as not buildable at all, not simply just institutional building. You have a 5-year review policy, which we tried to get council to lower, but that didn't fly either. So you have, in 5 years, the loophole-filled regulations are going to make a huge difference in our coastline. And that's not even talking about the ecological problems, it's talking about the development problems. And what someone has not mentioned here yet today is access. Now, if you go around the coast, what do you see? You're going to see buildings going up all along the coast, properties all along the coast, and you're going to see no trespassing, no trespassing, no trespassing, fences. I think, as Peter Barr said in an earlier meeting, all we're going to be left with is the little pockets of parks that we've been allotted to have our access to our coast. And I think it's irresponsible of this council to go along with that. I think that's all I have to say, at least the first go-around. Thank you.
Thank you. David Gravel.
Hello there. My name is David Joseph Gravel. I am a French person who just moved in Nova Scotia about 3 years ago. And when I heard about this city council, I thought it might be opportune to bring a little bit of my perspective to the situation. A lot of what we've been hearing has been, I want more policies, I want more red tapes because my city or my property has been eroding. And one of the problems I see is that a lot of what has been proposed is not actually going to help the common landowner to actually stop erosion. It's going to help him make it harder to sell his property or other kind of inconvenience like that. And I think that if we actually care about global warming, or however you want to call it, and erosion, I think is real. Water, if you leave it to its own device, will take over the land. If you don't believe me, just move to PEI, and you will see that 90 meters shoreline, high, not wide, high. And so I see the houses just about to fall, and it just happens. So I think that it's not going to actually achieve what we set out to do, and I think we need actual help. We actually need something that can be enforced. So the question is, who's going to enforce this? Is it going to be the municipality with the regulations, or is it going to be the police who's actually going to come on the shoreline and start measuring, oh, how is your property from the shoreline? So who's going to enforce this? Is this something that can be enforced? It has to be accountable. Somebody has to be able to actually enforce this. I think that we need real solution to real problems and help the common landowner to build, repair, and secure the coast. If that's what our objective is to stop erosion. And there is a difference between erosion and flooding. If you want to stop flooding, you're not going to do it. It's just going to happen. If you want to stop erosion, then put rocks on the side, or however you want to see fit, something that will stop the water. If you guys are not satisfied with what I'm saying, I think that it's been clear that the proposal are not sufficient, which means that it's not good enough. You might as well tell the common guy that from now on, 30 meters of your shoreline is now owned by the District of Lunenburg. And then put rocks on every single one of them, and erosion will be done tomorrow. But you can't do that, because that would be stealing, and stealing is wrong. Talking of stealing, who's going to pay for this? We are, with our taxpayer money. And I think that it would be given the inflation rates that are going on in the province, in the country, a grave sin to bring more red tape, provision, different legislations to make the common guy who's just trying to feed his family even more money out of his pocket. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of speakers that I do have. I would ask if there are any members of the public who have not registered but who wish to come forward to address council on these amendments? Are there anyone here who would like to come forward who has not spoken? Yes? If you would like to come forward, please, and state your name and your community and... Again, there is a timer on side of you for the 5 minutes, and if you wish to speak a second time, then you will be able to come up a second time.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Brent Evans. We live on Middle Road in Kingsburg on the Rosehead Peninsula. We have a property that we purchased a couple of years ago, and we were looking to build a house on that property. Just recently, we were talking to somebody who was designing our home, and that question came up during that discussion, which resulted in a call to the Lunenburg district offices, at which time we were informed that the setback is no longer 20 meters, but it is actually now 30 meters from the top of the bank, rather than 20 meters from the high water mark. So that was literally the first notice that we'd ever received, and it was only when we were asking the question about this issue. Well, we weren't even calling to ask about that issue. Actually, it was about the height of the property. So that was a surprise to us. So I'd heard a number of people say that they were that they brought this up, the lack of consultation, I guess, until now. And I was surprised to hear when we talked to this official that it had already passed first reading. So it was surprising. Maybe if we were around, we were out of the country for the winter, maybe we would have seen some kind of public notices, but we didn't see anything like that. Now, it surprises us because while we absolutely agree, climate change is real, there should be regulation. I see some shocking kinds of development on the waterfront. And we don't want to see houses floating away like we've seen in Newfoundland or other places. We purposely bought this property because it was at the top of a cliff on bedrock. So we're about 40 feet above the ocean. And the part of our property we were going to build on, we had a substantial frontage, and the part we were going to build was just adjacent to a cliff. Like, it's almost vertical there, with no effects whatsoever. And I understand from talking to some experts that the Rosehead Peninsula has looked like this for 300 years and will look like this for 300 more. So it's not really the highest risk sort of area, and yet this has sort of been implemented in a blanket way that that we now have to look at 30 meters back. Which again, we have a substantial sized property, so moving 30 meters isn't terrible. The only trouble is that the part of our property where we're looking to build, we actually have a neighbor who is about 10 feet from the edge of the cliff and is about 6 feet from our property line. So the further back we go, the more likely we are just to be looking at the back of this neighbor's house, which of course their house was built at a time when there wasn't any kind of regulation. Does it justify? We don't want to be that close. But we would like to see maybe a more measured response in that it would take into account the specifics of a building site rather than just sort of a blanket regulation that it be 30 meters back from the bank. That might suffice for more sandy area, but for something like bedrock, perhaps it could be, you could consider something closer. That's basically all I had to say. But thank you.
Are there any other speakers who have not spoken yet who would like to come forward at this time? Again, are there any other speakers who would like to come forward at this time who have not spoken? If not, are there any speakers who would like to speak for a second time? Andrew, I seen your hand first. If you would like to come forward, please. Again, state your name for the record and your community. And 5 minutes again is what we will continue.
My name's Andrew Himmelman. My family and I live in Newcomville, District 4. Going to start off here where I was cut off before because of the time. I was told eventually this document is going to be used as a foundation to create bylaws around inland lakes and rivers, just not yet. But the planning department, both in person and online, has stated no, this is not the case. In a May 14th council meeting, Letha Hasem stated, inland flooding will definitely be addressed by the flood mapping. We can't get away from that. So we have council saying inland flooding is going to be included eventually. We have the CAO saying that it will be addressed later. And then we have the planning department saying, no, the coastal development regulations will only apply to coastal areas on the ocean. Your role as council, as I believe, is to vote using an informed decision. Do you believe you have honestly and properly been informed by staff? Have you read the IPCC reports that all this is cited from? Have you done any research outside what has been presented to you by staff? How many landowners have you spoken to personally on your record? I asked council during public input about the data and where it was coming from. I also asked why wouldn't the 3.97 meters be broken down by each height measurement of concern? 1.57 meters for sea rise, 1.63 meters for storm surge, and 0.7 meters for high tide. Why hasn't this been amended by staff and the public shown where this data is derived from? Also, future council members can look at the previous data 5 years down the road as mandated and compare to the next current data. I'm not sure how many members of the public have actually taken the time to read the IPCC 6 report before applauding everything that is being presented before you, but it is 2,409 pages if you were wondering. This is a direct excerpt. Global mean sea level rise above the likely range approaching 2 meters by 2100 and in excess of 15 meters by 2300 under a very high GHG emission scenario, which is 8.5. Low confidence. Here I have some more data from the 6th report. Very low emissions scenario, the sea level will rise by 0.5 meters by 2100. Low scenario, 0.65 meters. Intermediate, 0.75 meters. And high, 0.9 meters. And the very high emission scenario measurement is right around the 1 meter in height. In summary, the best guess all these scientists have is around sea level rise is going to be somewhere 0.63 to 1.01 meters by 2100, and that's with medium confidence. Now, other municipalities have decided to go with lower measurements, like PEI having a 23-meter setback, HRM is a 20-meter setback, and PEI has regulation, and this is a direct excerpt, where adjacent to a beach, a buffer having a medium width of 60 feet or 60 times the annual erosion rate for the area, whichever is greater, measured from the top of the bank adjacent to the beach. The reality is we have new coastal property owners that have not lived here for generations. They are reaching out to Modal to help prevent Mother Nature from damaging their property and ultimately their choice of ownership. Hurricanes just didn't start in 2020 with the real estate boom around here. I assure you that storm surge has been around for many years. My concerns around the Modal data Modal is using is that the latest and greatest has come directly from a United Nations group of scientists that do not live here. It is not coming from our own federal or even provincial government. We have local planners here taking estimate info and best guesses from 2,000-page documents produced by the UN. The scenario they have chosen is above and beyond being likely, with low confidence of even occurring. I presented a federal natural resources document during public input from 2021, directing planners on what sea level rise should be used, and that was not even followed up on. Now, is this document actually going to protect the coast? The simple answer is no, it's not. This is to protect people from their own choices of where they live. This municipality is pandering to the coastal protection activists who have not fully read these documents and are taking Modal staff at face value and think, oh well, at least it's a start. I'm going to give you 2 examples on how this will do nothing. The development at Crescent Beach, which went through the proper
30
permitting
seconds.
processes, would not be stopped by this new set of rules. Why? Well, the Nova Scotia government sets the infilling high water mark, and now Modal is going to just make the property owners infill a greater amount. Instead of a 2-meter wall on Crescent Beach, you would have a 4-meter wall, along with 4 meters of infill. The owner obviously can afford an erosion assessment report, which would then set the house 15 meters from the top of that wall. Would anything change? No. Second example is that most of the coastal lots are finger lots. They are long, narrow lots full of our local evergreens. Anyone will be able to tell Modal, I'm going to build 30 meters from the shore to avoid development permits, and it will get approved. After that, they will be able to go in and clear cut right to the shore. Is that going to prevent erosion? No. This document is not about saving the coast, but is more so about how you can build and live on your land. It is modifying where you lie your head at night. A common thing I've heard from the public is about infilling. This does not prevent infilling. It actually promotes infilling.
Up at this time. I'd ask that you wrap up. I ask other people to finish in their time frame.
Well,
So I would like to stick with the same rules for everyone.
Yep, well, hopefully I get another chance. We have no one else here. I asked Chair that we could extend my time to 10 minutes. I've stayed up until 1 o'clock this morning doing this document. I'm a taxpayer, and I feel that since no one else is here talking, why can't I? Are we going to sit here in silence?
I would ask that if Ms. Reinhardt would like to come up, then we will allow you to finish your presentation then.
Thank you.
So you can finish, yes. Again, please state your name and the community that you
Sure,
live in.
Karen Reinhardt, New Cumberland, Crescent Beach. As I said before, I am very ambivalent about these regulations that you want to pass. I want regulation. I don't think that this regulation is very good. But I also have heard that this regulation is not expected to pass second reading. And from what I'm hearing today, there's a lot of people who don't want it to pass second reading. I'm not even sure I want it to pass second reading. But what worries me is that if it's not passed for second reading, that's the end of it. That this council will have no appetite to go back and revisit these regulations. Maybe to revisit the initial regulations that were brought forward, which is not an impossible thing to do. That this council will say, well, we spent 1.5 years on it and we're done. And I think that's an abdication of your responsibilities. And if that happens, also I understand that the new council may be in place in October. Maybe not a completely new council, but certainly there will be some changes. And that new council may or may not have any appetite to visit this subject again. I don't know what to say about this, because we need something. What you've got is not very good, because there are too many loopholes for the people that do want to continue to develop unabashedly everywhere. So that's really all I have to say. I just would like to ask you, really, I would like to ask you to go back to your staff who presented you very good regulations in the beginning, but were sidelined by interests of a special group of people who didn't want their properties devalued. And go back to what you had before, look at it, and try and bring it back to the table before some of you are not here anymore. Thank you.
Andrew, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you again. I think everyone knows my name by now.
If you would state it, though, for those on
Andrew
YouTube
Himmelman,
listening.
Newcombeville, District 4.
Thank you.
Just let me find my spot here, please.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone will be able to tell Modal, I'm going to build 30 meters from shore to avoid development permits, and it will get approved. After that, they will be able to go in and clear cut right to the shore. Is that going to prevent erosion? No. A common thing I've heard from the public is about infilling. This does not prevent infilling. It actually promotes infilling so you're above a flood zone. And if the province gives you the okay, there is nothing anyone can do about it. Anyone can pay for a wetland assessment proposal, and then you ask the province for a wetland alteration. This typically costs about $7 per square foot, and you are allowed to infill that area, and then that compensation goes towards wetland restoration in a different area. I truly implore the supporters of this new MPS to learn what the actual regulations are and do a sniff test on this document. Another thing I'd like to add is that members of this council sat at an NSFM spring conference and heard provincial representative Megan McMorris present new actions that the province is putting in place. Number 9 is a province-wide erosion risk assessment tool, which is about 2 years away. Number 10 is enhanced coastal flood mapping, which will be made public March 31st of 2028. How confident, Council, are you voting on this MPS and the likelihood it's going to line up with provincial regulations in 4 years' time? And if the provincial government is willing to wait until 2028 to publicize a formal coastal flood mapping document, what is the rush for Lunenburg County to push this through now? We can utilize this time to research, learn, and make an educated, properly planned coastal protection plan that will do what it is supposed to do. Protect our coasts. In my opinion, the province dropped this hot potato in February of 23, and our mayor started this project immediately after in March. Why? NSFM is NSFM getting funding now to implement this? Is Modal getting funding? This MPS is being pushed through by the mayor, and our tax dollars have been funding it. She is also recently the new president of the NS Federation of Municipalities. The province was getting too much flack, and they knew it was going to be easier to backdoor some regulation via Modal and then apply it throughout the province. NSFM has been advertising to hire within the last month a coastal land use planning coordinator and a flood adaptation facilitator prior to this even being read in and approved. This process is lip service at best, and it has been rushed in prior to the election this fall. On the surface, it's pandering to a group of people for votes and not engaging with the actual landowners. In May 14th, Council Member Letha Haysom said that the Minister of Environment, who was at the NSFM Spring Conference, implored the approximate 150 municipal representatives who attended to do the work the province won't do. I'm about to wrap up. I want to remind everyone about the MGA Section 9. The purpose of a municipality is to provide good government, provide services, facilities, and other things that, in the opinion of council, are necessary or desirable for all or part of the municipality. I implore council to table this MPS so all affected landowners are properly notified. That's 4,488, not 111. And ask staff for amendments to this document that works for everyone, that works for the people who have lived along the shore for generation after generation, who do not need you to tell them how to live on their property. Create something that doesn't devalue properties, which will also ultimately drive down tax revenue. A plan that does not take full control over people's right of land usage. Create something that is a development permit system on a property by property case. Create something that actually promotes and educates landowners on erosion issues and protection methods. And finally, create something that will protect the environment and our beautiful coastline for future generations to come. And if anyone's curious, you can find the province's new plan. It's on the NSFM website from the spring conference, and it says the flood tool is going to be done in 2028. So thank you, everyone. I know this took three times to do, but please contact the 4,488 landowners that this is actually going to affect. You can't vote unless you're properly educated or you've properly communicated towards this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak at this time? Any other speakers? If not, we are going to recess until 7 o'clock, where if there are new speakers here, they will speak at that time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will now continue with our public hearing. And I would ask that we will have, I have 3 speakers who have not spoken yet on the list. Anyone who has spoken twice will not be allowed to speak anymore. So we will continue on with our public hearing. And I would ask that when you come forward, if you could please sit at the table here and turn the mic on. State your name and address. Direct all statements to the chair. And your limit is 5 minutes. After we go through the 3 that we have here, or if there's more that register after this, we will open it up for those individuals to speak for the second time if they so wish. So at this time, I would ask Jennifer Yannens. I apologize if it's wrong. If you could please state your name, then I can. No, the mic is not on.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
it's on.
that sounds good. Thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Yosenhans. I'm from the community of Second Peninsula. And while I'm usually an agitator in meetings like this, looking for more environmental ambition, I just wanted to commend the council and Mayor Bolivar Getson for taking a strong stance in the absence of other coastal protection regulations under the purview of the provincial government. And I wanted to particularly thank you for the strong stance that you took on the potential loopholes in the Beaches Act. This is a matter of great concern for the coalition which I lead, which works on coastal and marine protection here in Nova Scotia and also across Canada. And I merely wanted to congratulate you all on your ambition. I'm very much looking forward to seeing these come into action. I hope that that happens in a timely manner. I know that we've been doing these types of consultations for at least 16 months under my watch, which means, of course, that they've been going on for far longer than that. So thank you. Thank you on behalf of myself, the conservation community, and future generations who will benefit from strong legislation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Marilyn Congdon. Could I ask that you come over to this side, please? And again, if you could just press the button on the mic and state your name and the community that you live in.
My name is Marilyn Congdon, and I'm from Upper Kingsburg. I've been here before. I thank you for hearing my voice. I also wanted to commend the Municipal Council for taking action on coastal regulations. I think it's a great job done. I just want to read the short letter that I wrote to the council expressing how I feel I'm representing the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy in Kingsburg. And we did write a short letter in support of what the council is doing. The Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy, incorporated in 1995, has as one of its core values to protect the coast and its associated wetlands, along with other ecologically sensitive areas on the Kingsburg Peninsula. And right now, the Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy has over 500 supporters on its list. The Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy Incorporated is considering the pressure of development and sea level rise that would threaten people's homes and endanger natural habitats. The Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy supports the municipality of the District of Lunenburg in their efforts to control development in these areas. Thank you for taking on this initiative on behalf of us all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Gallant. Teresa Gallant. Yes? So you did not want to speak? Okay. So that concludes the list of speakers that we have that have not spoken twice. I would ask if there are any members of the public who have not registered to speak who would like to come forward and address the council on these amendments at this time. Again, are there any members of the public who have not registered who wish to speak to come forward at this time? We have an individual who would like to speak for the third time, and we did allow another member to speak for the third time. So if, Karen, if you would like to come forward for the third time.
Karen Reinhardt, New Cumberland and Crescent Beach. I just want to reiterate the fact that I support regulations, and I have neglected to say that I appreciate the work that's gone into it by the council and staff. But I really would like to implore you to reconsider, no, it's not the right word, to look to pause and go back and fix some of the regulations that I mentioned before that I think are really not suitable for the spirit of what you're trying to do. And I think that that's all I ask, is that you take a second look at your first set of good regulations and your second set of much less good regulations and see if you can do some more work. I would not like to see this abandoned. We already had the province abandon one. I don't want to see you abandon it, and I worry that that's what will happen. But please take a second look. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to go over a review of the process from this time. So municipal council may make a decision at a future council meeting once the public hearing has closed. A special council meeting has been scheduled for Tuesday, June 18th at 9 a.m., at which time we will consider second reading and subsequent approval of the amended municipal planning strategy and the new municipal-wide land use policy bylaw. Should council approve the documents, they are forwarded to the Provincial Department of Municipal Affairs for review and confirmation that they do not conflict with any provincial statements of interest. A notice of approval is then issued advising of the adoption of these documents, and the date that the public notice is published is the date the municipal planning strategy and municipal-wide land use bylaw becomes effective. Before we go, I would like to thank the residents who have participated in this process this afternoon and this evening, as well as staff and council. In closing, I would like to remind councillors that this public hearing is the final opportunity for public input. Therefore, no further public input may be considered. This includes phone calls, emails, conversations, or texts from any or all sources. I now declare this public hearing closed.